Hey everybody, welcome to the Faith and Fandom Artists Alley Aftermath podcast for Mid-Atlantic Fantasy Con 2026. If you aren't aware with how these work, this is a podcast where I will review and recap the events that are part of a Comic-Con experience and just give an honest representation of the whole journey. Sometimes it's super positive, sometimes it can be negative, but I also try not to poop on people's cornflakes where I can avoid it, and to be as encouraging as possible with even the hardest circumstances. There have been some shows that I 100% did not do a review of because I had nothing positive to say. And I want to be real that when things like that come up, that's me making the best choice possible. And this will be a podcast where I'm going to talk about some negatives and some negative feelings and things of that nature. But at the same time, I want it to be something genuine and good and encouraging in the process. So if I get halfway through talking about this and be like, you know what, that sucked, let's just leave it alone, then I might scrap this whole thing and you're never hearing this except for the people that pop in and out of the TikTok live stream for it. So we're going to be reviewing Mid-Atlantic Fantasy Con. It's a first-year Comic-Con in Fredericksburg, Virginia. This is a Comic-Con that I'm pretty sure I originally heard announced on the Cosplay for Christ podcast. Jessica Luttrell, who hosts that, I think had this dude as a guest on her podcast and was promoting this show. So as I mentioned the show, there will be positives, there will be negatives, but I want you to understand I'm going to do my best to make sure I'm holding myself to standards of encouragement, even when it comes to criticism and stuff. So that's the con we're going to be reviewing and talking about and how that kind of processed through it. So Mid-Atlantic Fantasy Con was a first-year show, and the overall vibe and theme that they wanted to accomplish was having an indoor Ren fair, effectively. From what I talked to the showrunner about, they wanted to pull off the vibe and atmosphere of a Ren fair, but make it an indoor con and make it one day and less like heavily involved, like that you can do it more casually. I think was their goal and their vision in making this happen. Now, for me, and personally, I generally have a philosophy that if someone goes out of their way to invite me to be part of their con, and I will do my best to show up. Like, if it's within driving distance and I can afford to do it, and it's not going to break my bank, and there's a potential for adventure. If I can see some good in doing the show and I'm invited, specifically I will go if I'm invited. Because there's plenty of shows that wouldn't want me at their show. So the people that actually take the time to invite me, I want to be a little more proactive in actually responding to the people that invite me to their shows, and this was one of them. The guy who runs it hit me up on Instagram and invited me, and I checked my schedule, and it basically worked out. And it's going to be like 3 cons back to back to back in a row, but I thought it would be worthwhile to check out. Now, if you are aware of my background, of what I do on a day job and some other things, marketing is part of my job. I I do marketing for a community college. I've done marketing for camps. I've done marketing for special events. I've done marketing for apps like that. I've been a semi-professional, I guess technically a professional in marketing for at least a decade, but it's not something I'm bold about. But I can see trends going on and notice percentages when marketing isn't going well. And I say that as I was approaching Mid-Atlantic Fantasy Con, just from my perspective, the marketing wasn't going well in terms of social media. And I think that's a crucial effort. I think that's a big deal. If you're planning a Comic-Con that involves vendors and money and people setting up booths and traveling and the expenses that comes with that, your social media's got to be on point. And if it's not on point, you can't be surprised when the outcome doesn't go well. Now, my general philosophy is if you take the number of likes on a Facebook event, you can estimate anywhere between 20 to 40% of the people who say they're coming on a Facebook event to show up. 20 to 40%. And when it comes to Instagram, I'd say about the same thing. So for the Facebook event for Mid-Atlantic Fantasy Con, or just for the page in general, there were only 57 likes. Favorite Naruto character. What's up, man? My favorite Naruto character is Rock Lee. Ahmed asked on TikTok. But the Facebook for Mid-Atlantic Fantasy Con only had 57 likes. Ahmad, I'm doing a podcast about reviewing a Comic-Con right now, but I'll be glad to hit that up in just a little bit. Okay. They only had about 57 likes on their Facebook page and about 300 likes on their Instagram. And that, in terms of marketing, does not have a huge reach. But the simple fact is, I also don't know what they're doing in their local markets. I don't know what kind of marketing they're doing in their towns and their comic book shops. And that's something you can't always factor for, because sometimes you don't have to have crazy social media if you've actually got people invested locally. But just looking at the analytics of the show, based on the responses, based on how many people liked posts that were posted, who shared things, the frequency of posting and stuff like that, I was not crazy encouraged in thinking that this was going to go well. It just looked to me like there wasn't going to be attendance based on the social media numbers. And that's all I was going off of. I had already committed to going. I'd already said I was going. I'd already booked my hotel. I'd already made plans. And again, because someone asked me to do it, I was going to do it. Hi, Amanda. But I did not feel confident that it was going to be a great show. Heroes Con, I don't have to worry about that. That's a massive show. Shows like Greenville Comic Con have a built-in audience because they are frequent. But when it comes to shows that are one-year shows or first-time shows, you never know what their attendance is going to be like. So for weeks and months, I was watching that and just watching their social media presence not grow. Still going to show up, still going to be involved. And I had a pretty peaceful attitude about it. My daughter and I loaded up the car on Friday morning, and we headed off on our little road trip to Fredericksburg. It's about a 5-hour drive from where we live to where the con was going to be taking place. And it was just something to enjoy time with my daughter. That was honestly a big reason why I had a solid attitude about the whole thing. It was going to be a chance to hang out with my daughter and go on an adventure to somewhere neither of us had ever been before. And we were only like a little bit away from Washington, D.C. So if things got bad, we had options. King's Dominion, the theme park, was right around the corner, and Washington, D.C. was right around the corner. So if we wanted to, we could always have different adventures. But we drove we drove up to Fredericksburg. Not really any kind of complicated drive. My daughter played in the Nintendo Switch almost the whole drive. She played a Hobbit adventure game. I forgot what it's called, but there's a Hobbit game for the Switch. And she just cozy gamed the whole drive up there for the most part. And we got to the hotel, and we kind of checked in, and we noticed some neat stuff just on the way in, that there was a lot of historic things in the town leading up to it. There were people all out on a river, which I believe was the Chesapeake, like on that area, a watershed of that. There are people all over the river swimming, and just looked like a general summer vibe, even though it was just a Friday afternoon. And we went in and checked the hotel, got kind of set up, and I asked my daughter if she wanted to go swim, if she wanted to go get food, if she wanted to explore. And she wanted to explore and then get food and, kind of hang out from there. So we went and asked the lady at the counter, what would you recommend for coffee, for food, and adventure? And for coffee, she recommended Black Rifle Coffee, which was 2 buildings over from the hotel. For food, she recommended Vinny's Italian Bistro or something to that effect, which was down the street. But it was going to close before we would be ready to eat. So that was out of date. And then I asked her about, adventure stuff, and she just recommended a shopping center with stores. And that's not what I was asking about. I wanted to see something other than just stores in this capacity. She recommended not going downtown because it would be turned into a club scene. And that just seemed like such a weird statement. It's like, don't go downtown, it'll be the club. Which, I'm picturing historic towns, and downtown is like chill people in bonnets and stuff. But it is what it is. We went and we got coffee. And we drove downtown into Fredericksburg, and we kind of looked around. We went to George Washington's childhood home, which looks about exactly what you'd think it would look like. We drove over to where the convention center was to kind of get a lay of the land for that. And when we got there, it was also directly, now for a convention center, this thing was directly next to a baseball stadium. I want to say it was the Fredericksburg Nationals or something to that effect. There's a photo of it on my socials that I'll check out later if I try and remember it. But the baseball stadium was packed with kids, and I asked my daughter if she wanted to go into the game. And she's like, absolutely not, because it was just overcrowded and chunky with people. And thank you for the love and the likes. I'm assuming that's Amanda. Thank you, Amanda. You're a rock star. And so she didn't want to go in the baseball game. She just wanted to drive around and chill. And so then we did go downtown. And downtown did not look very clubbish or anything. But one of the things that we saw when we went downtown was that there was a walking path that went over the bridge that went over the Chesapeake. And if you know me, one of my favorite things to do is to go to Charleston, and it's my annual tradition is to walk the bridge over Charleston, and they had a walking path like that over the Chesapeake. And so as soon as we saw it, like Carmen knew we were about to walk a bridge. So we got out, we walked the bridge, we took photos, we enjoyed and we managed to get it right at sunset, which was nice. There was a very angry lady on the bridge who was talking to herself and was seemingly emotionally struggling. And it was in my nature to want to try and reach out, but obviously was not the right time. And I was not in my bubble to be trying to be counseling, people on a bridge with my daughter at that moment. Yeah. So we walked the bridge. We enjoyed the sunset. You can see some photos of that on the socials as well. I don't think I posted that on Faith and Fandom, and it might be on my personal Facebook or it's on Instagram, maybe. I don't know. Either way, it's definitely in my TikTok of that. But we climbed back over the bridge. We got to the car. And then we were going to go try and find some food. And then we drove one block and found out that the lady at the hotel was 100% accurate about the club scene. I'm talking every building was overflowing with lines of people trying to get into the club. And there were clubs everywhere. And it literally looked like a cross between Myrtle Beach, Spring Break, and a night at the Roxbury. It was that kind of club level. I was like, oh my gosh, this is for real. And then there was even an ice cream place that looked super dope, and it was like called Carl's Ice Cream. And there was a line around the ice cream place like it was a club, even though I'm pretty sure it was just ice cream. So, but either way, people just apparently get in lines in Fredericksburg at nighttime and wait for adventure to happen. But we enjoyed that, and we settled on where we were going for dinner. We saw that right across the street from our hotel was a place called the Bearded Monkey. And I asked my daughter, like, you sure you don't want to go to the nice Italian restaurant that the lady said? And she's like, no, I want to go to the Bearded Monkey. And I debated her on it. I even made her roll dice to determine if we were going to the Bearded Monkey or not. And she won. So we ended up going to the Bearded Monkey. Now, the Bearded Monkey is along the lines of a sports bar / brewery / tap room type situation, which that doesn't necessarily mean it's a red flag, but she wanted a burger. She liked what she saw on the menu. They had cornhole and billiards and arcade games and stuff. She was sold. First off, this is the Bearded Monkey takes up half of a hotel. Now, it takes up half of a hotel that I wouldn't have stayed at, which was a red flag for me. But she was really sold on wanting to go to this restaurant. So we walk in, and we're just trying to go sit down. And I get stopped by a bouncer. I'm like, I'm just trying to go to a restaurant. I'm like, did I just get bounced at a restaurant? Big dude, all black, cowboy hat, beard, looked like Drew McIntyre. Stopped me and asked for my ID. And then he's looking at my ID. He sees Carmen like 3 feet shorter than me standing right behind me. He's like, are y'all just here to eat? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh. And he looked confused. Like, the restaurant's open. But he looked super confused that we were just there to eat. He's like, well, go sit down. But then I realized why he was confused is because everybody else there was there to line dance, which is something I forget exists. There was probably 50 to 60 youngish people in there having themselves an actual hootenanny. Line dancing, sweaty, looking like they're in a country music video. And just like, okay, fine. And we're looking around, and there literally aren't chairs or table space for us to sit down. And these two young men say, no, just sit with us at the end of their table, which was a bit weird. And he's like, no, it's cool. Come sit with us. And so we sat down, and then I instantly regret it because these dudes were cursing at profane levels pretty regularly. Now, I get it. Y'all are having drinks and food on a Friday night, and you're young. I get the vibe, but I was just sad that I had sat down with my daughter at that. And I'll say this, the food was good. The service was super bad. And it caused problems, which I'll get into. The waitress seemed really frustrated that she had to come in there and serve us. Again, we're in the dinner area, and there are probably 3 tables of people in there. One has already been eating. One is the 2 young gentlemen that I'm sitting with, and then me and my daughter. She took our order and then never came back for the rest of the night of her own fruition. So we both ordered burgers. Carmen had a burger she wanted to get. And I got a burger, some onion rings. And these onion rings were good, but they also had a level of crisp to them that I just needed some ranch or something. And so I just killed my burger, like wasted no time with that. But then when I got around to the onion rings, I'm just like, I need ranch. I just need that. And I'm waiting for the waitress. And then I look and like lean over and look. And the waitress is sitting at the bar, like sitting at the bar between two customers, and both customers are like hands on her shoulders and they're flirting back and forth and doing the things. And I get it. If working a bar on a Friday night is your primary like income, it's better to put investment into those people than the dude with a kid at a table ordering burgers and onion rings. The logics. But there comes a point. So after I waited about 15 more minutes, it's like I'm at the point now where my food's getting cold. And I just want some ranch, and there's no other servers because they're all dealing with the honky tonk folk. So I I tell Carmen to mind her surroundings, and I get up and I walk to the bar, and I say, "Hi, ma'am, I'm so sorry to bother you, but can I please get a water and some ranch?" And so she parts her way from the bar, and the dude's at the bar. There is one big, burly, red-faced Caucasian man who had been heavily drinking. And he was very unhappy with me for taking away, apparently, the best server in the world. And he literally grabbed me. He put his arm out. Amanda says, "This is why I hate places like that." Yes. This dude grabbed me by my arm. Now, I have a beefy arm. My arm, as you can see on the TikTok camera, my arm is thick. I'm not saying I'm the most muscular person in the world, but my arm is thick. This dude grabbed me by the arm and squeezed me and like made an angry face at me. Like he was mad at me for interrupting his conversation with my waitress, and I just wanted some ranch. She brings me ranch and water. I hoof those things down as fast as I can, comfortably, drink my water, pay the bill, and we go to walk out. And then the drunk dude follows me out of the restaurant. And he's like approaching me, and he like squares up with me. I tell Carmen, "Go get in the car." And first of all, this dude's bigger than me, but also his blood alcohol content makes me not take him very seriously. I understand that people like that can be dangerous, but this dude also did not scare me. So I put Carmen in the car, and I stood my ground, and I just waited for this dude to walk away. And finally, somebody from the restaurant came and grabbed him and pulled him back inside. And we drove away and went to our hotel. And Carmen's like, "What the heck just happened?" I was like, "It's okay. People just having a rough night, apparently." So really enjoyed the burger and the stuff at the Bearded Monkey. The service was not for the diner, which I get that. But was not a fan of that. That was kind of discouraging, but it is what it is. Went back to our hotel room, crashed, got up early at 6:15 to do this because there was the only load in time was at 7 a.m. Couldn't load in the day before because there was a scrapbooking convention that was going on Friday. And that place was packed at the scrapbooking convention. We went to go load in, and we get there, we get some coffee on the way. I pull up, and the showrunner comes out, and he like comes and shakes my hand, and he welcomes me, and he thanks me for being there, and I appreciate. I was grateful to talk with him, and grateful to be there, honestly, because again, if somebody invites me, I'm gonna do my best to show up. We load up all of the gear, which takes a while. We find our space. And this was one of those scenarios where we needed to provide our own tables, our own chairs. And there was literally just a 10-foot block marked on the ground for us to occupy. And that's all the other people had too, was 10-foot blocks. So the setup for this show was one end of the building was all tables to sit at. I guess if you were eating, if you were playing a game, whatever like that. Next was a stage and the facade of a castle and chairs. Then over another chunk was all the vendors and artists. And so we were all in 10-foot squares, all down for a row. Then there was a space and then more 10-foot squares and all these things. And the only problem is there was no space in between these 10-foot spaces. So depending on how people set their stuff up, there was nowhere to go. So if they decided to use all of their 10-foot space bumped up to the back of you, you couldn't sit down without hitting somebody's stuff, or you couldn't get around your booth or stuff like that. And so when I pictured a 10-foot block to be able to occupy my space, I didn't accommodate, and this is on me, I didn't accommodate enough for room to move around. So we had 3 tables originally. We went down to 2. I had like 2 6-foot and 1 3-foot table. Went down to the 2 6-foots. I gave my daughter a good chunk of space for her pen business, and I had my booth set up on the other 6.5 foot, or maybe 8 feet of space. And it took a solid 2 hours and some change to set up our booth and to get everything ready and to get it about where we wanted it to be. And as we were doing this, other people are doing the thing, and I'm gonna speak openly, honestly, and negatively. And I need you to hear my heart, because I'm gonna say some negative stuff, but I don't want you to think that I'm being completely hateful for no good reason. And I don't want hate to be the motivation or the concept of it. But hear me out. If you know me and we've had genuine conversations about these things, or maybe you've listened to some other things that I've said, I'm not going to campaign against it, but if you ask my opinion, you'll get it. But this is the place for me to share my things, so roll with me here. I am very much not a fan of generative AI. It's terrible for the planet. AI used up as much water last year as the entire planet did in terms of drinking. That's a bad thing. We've all seen a Terminator-esque movie. And for me personally, generative AI is to art what pornography is to intimacy. It robs it of anything beautiful and organic and genuine and that has soul, and just gives you a sloppy product. I'm not a big fan. I do my best to avoid it, to avoid people working with it, and it's not for me. So the people setting up directly next to me in this very tight window of 10 by 10 boxes is a fully AI generated animated kids show. Like, the songs are AI generated, the animation is AI generated. They built an entire animated series just using AI and prompts. And I am so not a fan. And the dude literally was coming through and just proselytizing the beauty of AI and saying that if you're against AI, you're stupid and all these things. And he's like, you can't, there's AI in your car. And so out the gate, I started out with a bad attitude for the day, because I was setting up my booth while this guy was trying to old mansplain why I should love AI to me, which was just, it put me in a sour mood. And I fully recognize my attitude was not exactly cash money, and how I was vibing with this dude strong arming me on AI. And just personally, the music, they had a TV broadcasting their AI cartoon, and the music of it was enough that made me want to leave. I originally was going to sit my chair on the side of the booth that kind of propped me up near that, so I would be on the other side of the space from Carmen, so that she would have more space to herself. And then once I heard two of their AI kids songs back to back, I'm like, I have to move. I can't sit here. So I moved to the other side. And so it took me, let's say if they hit me at about 7:30, and my attitude was bad starting at 7:30 a.m., I don't think my attitude got okay until about 1 p.m. And I was just annoyed and angry and frustrated with that. And it wasn't just that, but that's what started it. And people like, nobody also was, I guess, used to this spacing, because everybody was on top of each other, and it was like, we've never had to set up in this type of just chalk outline boothing space. Which, that's on us. We should have, done the math better in our own heads. But either way, we're doing the setup, we're doing these things, and I'm looking around, and there's a variety of booths. There's a lot of gothic stuff, a lot of mythical stuff. I'm next to a lady who makes like metal wind chimes and some stickers, and she looks cool and has a cool outfit. And everything's just kind of getting set up. And again, my attitude is bad. I'm aware of it. I was working on it. I was actively trying to combat my attitude. But it's one of those things, when you have a bad attitude, it's hard to fight it. But I was trying. And so all things were coming together. It was about time for the show to start. And the show opened. And I'm going to say some negative things. Not that the whole AI rant wasn't a negative, but I'm going to say some negative things. And I'm going to say that with the heart, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just being honest about the conversation, which is why we're here. From that point on, from the time the show opened till the time the show closed, I don't know that there were ever more customers in the room than there were vendors. Like, I don't know that. Because if you look down the aisles, you would see people, but a lot of the people were the people who were there, or they were part of it, or the families of the people that were part of it, or it was just the same people circling around. And during that first 10 to 12 window, the first 2 hours that the show was open, I don't think, for me personally, and I don't expect to always do well at a show. I know my stuff is not for everybody. And I know that having the attorney, like my new fantasy book, helps, especially at that event, but I know it's not for everybody. So my daughter and I sit there, and I already said my attitude's bad. And I'm just watching as there just aren't people there. Like, I want to say when it opened, for the first while, there was probably maybe 20 people tops at the beginning. And if you've got 40 vendors and performers and stuff like that, and there's 20 people in the room, it's going to feel real rough. It's going to feel pretty bad. And the atmosphere in the room was palpably sour. of just people who weren't unhappy with how things were going. And again, there's not much you can do with that other than control your own attitude and expectations. And I told Carmen pretty early on, like from like 10:05, I was like, listen, if by 12:30 things aren't better, we're packing up and we're going to King's Dominion. And I was genuine enough in that I was already looking at tickets. I'm still getting King's Dominion ads on my phone. That I was literally saying, you know what, if this doesn't turn out, we're only 30 minutes from King's Dominion. Let's head on back and go to King's Dominion, and we'll leave King's Dominion when we would have left the show, so we can still get home on time. And so I was looking up theme park tickets. And my attitude was bad internally, but I don't think I was expressing it other than to my daughter. But one of the things is, as I'm watching other people get frustrated and sad and discouraged, and because people had spent a lot of money to be there and to do these things. And again, I'm not blaming this on the showrunner. I'm not saying it was anybody's specific fault. I'm just saying it was a rough situation for people to be emotionally experiencing. It was to the point, again, nobody had actually stopped by my booth or talked to me or bought anything like that about 2 hours deep. So as I'm in the middle of this funk, the showrunner comes to my booth and says, hey, I'd like you to come be on this writers panel. He wasn't going to invite me on the writers panel when just for Faith and Fandom, because, you know, this was almost a Ren Fair type vibe and that didn't fit. But because I'd written The Attorney and because I had a new fantasy book out, he said that he wanted to invite me. Yes, I'm going to pre-order GTA 6 on the 25th. But he invited me to come be on the writers panel. And it's one of those things, like, I wanted to be angry. I wanted to be frustrated. I wanted to leave. And this dude caught me at, like, literally noon when I said that I was going to leave at 12:30 if things didn't get better. Now, again, realistically speaking, I probably would not have left at 12:30. I probably was just talking crap and was not going to follow through with it. I was just having a bad attitude. But because this dude came and talked to me and I agreed to do it, and there was, let's say 8 to 10 people at the panel space. And he had his 3 books set up. He has set up one of my books, and he had his daughter narrate the panel. Moderate the panel. And I'll be super honest, the panel was good. It was a good panel. First of all, it was my first time ever being on a panel to discuss fiction, because I'd never written fiction before. I'd only done inspiration or encouragement or things like that. So I'd never written fiction, so I'd never been on a fiction writer's panel where I actually had something to contribute. So now, all of a sudden, I've got actual conversations to contribute about world building and writing and things like that. And out of the 10 people who are at the panel space, and then some other people came and joined in later, there's one young lady who you can see her in my socials wearing like a fairy outfit and holding a copy of book 10. That young lady was taking notes. She was actively dialed in. She was asking big questions. She was all in on this conversation. There was a lady to the right who was like also taking notes and asking questions, and it was genuinely turning out to be a really good panel. There was a dude to the left who was asking questions. There's a couple at the right who's in cosplay. You can see them in the photos as well. And like, this panel was going really well, and I felt like I was actually contributing, and like it was a worthwhile reason to be there. For me, I'm always looking at how God is moving in situations. I'm always looking at how, like, what God, why do you have me in this space right now? Why am I in this place? What do you got me doing here? And for me, I'm always looking for those checkpoint moments, those moments that say, this is why you're here. And like, if you ever played, I want to say it's Cruising USA or something, it would go like checkpoint when you're driving around. Like, that panel was a checkpoint for me. That panel was the reason I needed to be there personally. To that point, that panel made me feel like that was worthwhile actually showing up for that. I got to really encourage and interact with at least 5 people on writing and inspiration and encouragement, and that felt worthwhile to me. Panel lasted about an hour. Went back to the booth, and my daughter's like, "Are we leaving?" And I'm like, "No, we'll stick around for a little while more." Knowing good and well, I'm not leaving. But I did buy some drinks. There was a booth right in front of me, which was dirty sodas and boba and lemonades and junk like that. So I had my daughter pick out some stuff. I picked out some stuff, and I got some really good stuff from them. And the lady who was running it, genuinely a peach of a person to talk to, very sweet, kind person. And I enjoyed our interactions with that. So I had a sweet treat, and I had a good panel, and my attitude like 100% shifted. So it was like Elijah. I needed a nap and a snack to get my crap together. And so then after that, we both started drawing, doing some doodles, and nothing crazy, and it didn't go well. I threw away everything I drew that day. I had a really good parappa the rappa, but then I messed it up. All that being said, let me go back to my notes because I'm about to ramble off of here. There was one of the first interactions we had, not with somebody who talked to us, but somebody who was just there. And again, remember, there's no space in between these booths. This woman says she looked at my booth, walked over to the next booth, which had no division. Like, literally, there's like no difference between standing in front of me. Says, "Why are these people here? This isn't a Christian event. They shouldn't be here." And I'm like, "Thanks." I was just like, but this was early on, so this probably helped contribute to my attitude in the early on stages. But yeah, she was upset that we were there. There was a young lady who, all right, so on the stage, there were performers throughout the day of doing different stuff, whether it was the panels, discussions, or whatever else. There was a young lady with a, as she referred to it, a self-deprecating comedy routine where she sang songs and parodies and played the flute. And when she wasn't on stage, she was playing geeky themes on the flute. So you'd just be sitting there, and all of a sudden you'd hear Marvel or Disney or Lord of the Rings or Moana bust out in flute. And that's cool. I appreciated the effort. But I'm going to say this. I don't know that anybody is down for 7 hours of flute. And at one point in time, the booth behind me is like, "Is this on recording? How can we get it stopped?" I'm like, "No, that's a young lady over there playing the flute." And she was just like literally flustered about it. Again, the kid didn't do a bad job. I think the culmination of the attitude with that was rough. But yeah. But after the panel, people came by the booth. One of the ladies who was at the panel came by and picked up the attorney, like right out the gate. So that was my first sale of the day. And also, it was grateful that it was the attorney. That's good. Then a lady came by, another vendor, and bought 4 shirts because my shirts are on clearance. And that was a blessing. and I gave her a extra shirt for free just for like making the day less rough. And then one of the couples who were at the con, or at the panel, they were sitting in the back of the panel. They came by and they were talking to me, and they said, or they were asking me questions about what we talked about. But she's like, "Hold on, are both of these tables yours?" Because if you've seen the picture, I was sitting at Carmen's pen table, and my books were to the right. She's like, "Are both of these tables yours?" She's like, "I feel like I've met you before. Faith and Fandom sounds really familiar." I said, "You look really familiar. We probably have met." She's like, "Would you by chance have ever been in Fayetteville, North Carolina?" I'm like, "I live in Lumberton. I'm always at Fayetteville." She's like, "Me and my dad stood at your booth years ago and talked about this, and we still talk about you to this day. We talk about that conversation all the time, and we just couldn't remember the name of your booth." And like, she had like a full God drop kicked her in the throat moment of like where she realized God put her where she needed to be and where I needed to be. And we had that moment of like, okay, it was like a checkpoint. It was one of those things. And I was like, okay, I'm exactly where I needed to be, even if my attitude sucked to get to this point. But she literally, and she said it a couple times. She's like, "Me and my dad still talk about that conversation to this day. And we're going to be talking about it even more now." And, they got some stickers, and we talked about Narnia, and we did some things. One of the booths next to me, who had like metal stuff and stickers, offered to trade me one of her stickers for a Narnia sticker. And then we talked about Narnia for a while. This wasn't like, all of her stickers were rough, like pretty, like stuff that I could not in good conscience put anywhere. But she wanted a Narnia sticker, so I was like, "Here you go." And it was good interactions, and we got to talk for a while. Another lady came by, and I don't know what she was cosplaying as, but she was wearing a green dress and had a mask over her face that covered her eye. Almost looked on a Legend of Zelda level-ish type situation. But as we were talking, she got really interested in what I was doing with Faith and Fandom because she's doing it from a neuroscience level. She was looking at it from a neuroscience scale of how faith and geeky stuff affect your brain and the overall need for divinity to be attached to geeky content. So she looked up the website, and we did all, and like had good interactions. And then eventually the lady who was wearing the fairy costume, who was at the panel, came by, and we started talking. And at the panel, I really only discussed The Attorney because it was my fiction book, and that's what I was on the panel for. She's like, "Wait, are all of these books yours? You have Bible studies?" And we had like this really long conversation about faith and wrestling and God and nerdy stuff. And like, she went over there to pick up The Attorney, and that's what she was there for. But then she like just kept landing on book 10 in Faith and Fandom. She's like, "This is the one I need." And just really good in conversations and interactions. Now, I was there a long time and had probably 4 really solid, good, encouraging conversations. There are other shows that I've spent just as much money and just as much time to have less conversations or less sales, for that matter. And somebody even bought one of Carmen's pens. So, that being said, my attitude sucked originally. I had a bad attitude. But then, I stuck it out, and God did some stuff that really did just astonish me and surprise me in a lot of ways. The fact that young lady said that she and her dad talk about our conversation on a regular basis, and then we ended up in the same place. Because listen, y'all, there's a 4-hour difference between where we were and where we last interacted. Hi, Wyatt. So we, it was just good. Now, somewhere around 2:00, some vendors started packing up. And then they had had a they'd had a voice actor panel that was going on, and then the girl who did the comedy show before had gotten back on the stage, and by 3:30, a good chunk of the people were calling it quits. And then at 4 o'clock, they announced the cosplay contest. And if you've ever been a vendor at a con, you know that if the cosplay contest is the last thing going on at the show, you can basically kiss the rest of the show goodbye, because the last hour is going to be eaten up by the cosplay contest if there's any people there. But the effective thing was that by 3:30, there was nobody else there except the artists and the vendors. There was maybe one family that came in at 3:45. But people were starting to pack up, and they were packing up by 4:15 like the show was over. So my daughter and I started packing up, and I want to say that we were out the door by 5:15 and heading out. I'm going to say some negatives, okay? I'm not saying them to be mean, evil, or sassy. I'm just talking about what went down. The showrunner, I missed this happening, okay? The showrunner had emailed and apologized to us for the lack of attendance. And I had missed that email had happened, that he had sent that, and I had missed it completely. But what I did see was the responses. And I'm going to read some of this email, but it's not for everybody, so I'm going to skip some parts, okay? It says, "Thank you for being a part of this year one experience. I am fully aware that low attendance being an issue. I am just as upset as you. I worked tirelessly to make sure this event was a success." And he goes on to say his efforts to kind of promote it and everything else. But then what followed was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 emails demanding refunds from vendors. Now, he told them they could contact him personally if they wanted a refund. But rather than contacting personally, they were hitting like reply all, which just felt like a burn. I am not going to request a refund. Now, I did not make my money back at this show. If my memory serves, the show cost like $140 to do, or $150, somewhere in that bubble. And I drove 5 hours to get there one way and stayed at a hotel. So, no, I realistically made $60 potentially, I think, somewhere in that bubble. And so, yeah, no. But I'm also not going to ask for a refund, because I'm just not. But here's what I can understand all the vendors and stuff being frustrated. But what I also can understand is how heartbreaking it is to put this time of work into something and it not pan out. And I have no interest in fanning that pain or suffering. Because I don't think it was there. Like somebody even mentioned in the emails, all the elements for a good show were there. It was just did not come together properly. And again, marketing is a hard thing, and you got to know what you're doing and how what you're doing is actually being received and reached. My daughter and I headed back. She slept for an hour and a half the minute we got in the car. We got past Richmond, and I woke her up and refilled, got gas, did all the things. By the way, there's a great value ramen flavored snack mix where they have little circles of ramen. Fantastic, by the way. But we drove and we got, gas and coffee at Wawa, and we drove. We stopped in Wilson, or north of Wilson, North Carolina, because just found out there's finally a Crystal in North Carolina, which is just north of Wilson. And it was a horrible life choice for me. I regretted it all day today. But we drove back and we listened to 21 Pilots the whole way back, album by album. If she hadn't taken a nap, we probably could have listened to almost the whole catalog. And we had really good traffic. We had really good driving, and we were safe the whole way back. There's a lot of accidents and stuff on my way there, and I was really honest and really nervous about the drive because I thought it was going to be a sucky drive if we faced as many accidents. I had no problems whatsoever. Car made it, God blessed with all that, and I'm grateful. So at the end of the day, I got to be on a good panel. I got to have genuine conversations that I felt were encouraging and reflective with about 5 people. And I got to spend some good time with my daughter. And probably made some impact beyond what I saw. Now, were there other negatives attached to it? Absolutely. But I'm grateful for the good that I got to see. And if me driving 10 hours was necessary to be able to connect and encourage with 5 or 6 people, like on a genuine level, that's worth it. Yeah. So that's about it. That's the nuts and bolts of how that went. So now you know. So what I will say is I'm praying for that showrunner and for how these things go and for their encouragement in the process. And grateful for how God used what we had. Before I bounce out of here, I want to take a moment to thank our Patreon supporters. Lance James, Zach T, Roshan John, Ryan Felton, Jessica Luttrell, Jackie Kraft, Kelly Townsend, Alan Wallace, Fab Quack, Rivka and Tristan Birch, Dot Winston, Michelle Stewart, Lynn Turner, David Brooks, Jeff Weimer, Jamie Montgomery, Matthew Coleman, Jonathan Herman, Ron Petit, Gear Saber Cosplay, Scott Ward, Alicia Glenn, Jason Crutchfield, Mike Perna, Zach Harris, Caleb Grimm, Jeanette Skaggs, Jason Bullock, Sarah Lewis, Patrick Gale, Rebecca Godlove, and Adam Davis. Thank you all for being the amazing Patreon supporters that you are and helping make adventures like this one possible. You helped me be able to connect with 5 people I may not have connected with in a long ways anyway else. I also say the showrunner said that they had roughly about 200 people come throughout the whole day. So they apparently had guaranteed at least 1,000 attenders as they were talking to some of the vendors, and apparently 200 people came through. So which is, kind of the frustration. But yeah, that's... Kendra says, bro, I remember every song from camp that you played at PBC. Dude, I'm heading to Ponderosa on Sunday to do next week's camp. But I'm really glad you remember it. But yeah, thank y'all for taking the time to listen, for encouraging. My next event will be this Friday at Nerd Market in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And then, as I just mentioned to Kendra over here on TikTok, that I will be speaking at Ponderosa Bible Camp in Mentone, Alabama next week and leading worship there. So, yeah. Thank y'all for taking time to listen. I'm going to read our goodbye verse. 3 John verse 2. At some point, I'm going to memorize this thing. It ain't today. 3 John 2 says, Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers. Thank you all for taking time to listen, and I hope to see you all at a con real soon.